Hello, everybody. Welcome. It's a gray, misty, breezy day here in San Francisco. I appreciate those of you who can put up with a little background noise. I know I don't like it when I'm listening. And I imagine I could upgrade the tech. I do have a recording system that I haven't really tested yet. We'll see if that gets implemented. Generally, I'm 3/4 satisfied with the quality of this, and it's comfortable for me while I'm walking. So, yeah, thank you to everybody who listens, and particularly my 4 supporters on Patreon, and a couple of mystery supporters who've made one-time donations. One in particular recently sent me a nice little sum of money thanking me for my writing, which receives nearly no attention. I have probably 100 essays on Medium. All of them are free. They're not paywalled. I guess 1 or 2 might still be paywalled, but I've included a link in each of them that should allow you to read the essay for free. If it doesn't, I hope someone will comment about that, because I can only see from my, account perspective, usually. So I have some very interesting stuff to talk about today. Something that I've very rarely spoken of previously. And I think it might be extremely timely and important, what I'm going to talk about today. Though I also hope I may have time to include some discussion about the relevance, how to put this. So, in recent recordings about thrisps, language as an infection that we're subjected to in childhood, these are topics and orientations that have been very important to me prior to 2002, but especially thereafter, in the aftermath of my experience with what I usually think of as a non-human intelligence without being able to say precisely what it is. So I hope to talk about the relationship, how the processes and features of thrisps and the compromising of the human cognitium, the network of human minds, by these processes are expressed in human collective behavior as bureaucracies, particularly in war. My first publishing project ever, when I was about 24, was a bumper sticker that actually became quite popular, particularly here in San Francisco. I wasn't living here at the time. That simply said, "I'd rather be driving nails into the coffin of bureaucracy." And I've considered lately republishing this. However, these days in the United States, that could be understood as a pro-Trump or pro-MAGA slogan, which it certainly isn't. I'll just say very briefly that what's going on here in the United States has nothing to do with reducing bureaucracy and everything to do with the capture of the most crucial infrastructural elements of our society by criminals, wealthy people, insane, fascistic, effectively meta-bureaucrats, right? Like, these are people who play at bureaucracy at the highest level and turn it into a sort of a football game where they win, and the future of life on Earth, the common people, our health, well-being, and potentials for development are fracked, right? For the sake of stacking up power or, numbers in bank accounts and so forth. So that is not, by any stretch of the imagination, an anti-bureaucratic process. It's a kleptocracy progress, right? Meaning, like theftism, right? It's a theftist situation. And this topic does slightly dovetail with what I will talk about. So, during my experience, I was given perspectives that were so profound that they illuminated, as if from within, many fables and stories, often thought of as fairy tales, or even things like children's songs, particularly the clapping song that begins, "Hey, hey, oh, playmate, come down and play with me." Right? I cannot recall the entire lyric set there. This song has to do with being born. And it's a song that you can imagine some human wrote or composed, but the muse that was orienting that human's awareness was speaking something primordial. And one of the most important stories, particularly right now at this point in human history, is the story that we think of as being about a young chimney sweep girl, who in English we call Cinderella. This is one of the most important fables for Western children, particularly young women. But here's the thing, and strap in because we're going to go deep here. I know Cinderella personally. She's a real being, and she's not a human girl. She is the origin of human girls. She is the being that we presently, her name is literally a synonym for dirt, right? We have this derogatory aphorism in English, right? You are dirt, you're nothing. Your name is dirt. Right? You've destroyed your reputation, so forth. And the Cinderella story is absolutely a pre-human story. It is the earth speaking into her children about her own experience. And the experience whereby she became a living world. So in this story, there is a woman who is ensconced with people who are not her family. And she has 3 stepsisters that are very charismatic and wealthy. And they don't like her. They're mean to her. They make her sweep the chimney, right? So that her dress is constantly covered in ash. This is very crucially important because there were long phases of Earth's developmental history where she was essentially a fireplace. So, she's got this one sister with this incredible red dress. The next sister has kind of a rainbow dress with a very special belt buckle. The next sister has these astonishing golden rings that surround her. They are gloriously, physically beautiful. And I'm sure most of you know this story. You probably know it well, though you may not have surveyed it recently. In the light of what I'll share today, I would suggest that a rereading of a good version of this story, perhaps a very old version, might be enlightening. So Cinderella is helpless, she is trapped, she is covered in ashes, she's filthy, and it becomes apparent that there is going to be a ball, right? A soiree. And particularly all the important people are going to be there. This is a big deal. There's no chance of Cinderella going at all. None. It's impossible. However, her fairy godmother in the English versions steps in and creates a situation where all of the pragmatic necessities for Cinderella attending the ball are taken care of. She gives her a beautiful dress, she arranges footmen for her carriage, wonderful glass slippers, and tells her, be sure to be home before midnight. This is very important, but I'm not going to explore that particular vector much. Otherwise, the mirages that she's woven around Cinderella will dissipate and she will be left bereft and revealed. Now, there's a feature of this story that is not discussed, which is that the actual difference between Cinderella and the other women at the ball is that, unbeknownst to everyone, Cinderella is actually naked. This is not discussed in the story itself, but is a very important thing, a very important feature, right? To imagine or consider that Cinderella is without accoutrement and is thus au naturel.
There's a wildflower.
Now, the ball is attended by a prince, and at the ball, on her way home as she's leaving in a hurry, she's nearly late, she loses one of her, this is crucially important, one of her crystal slippers. Now, if you think carefully about this matter, it would be very painful to wear a slipper made of crystal. Not impossible to craft one that is not agonizing to wear, but very difficult. So she loses one of her slippers, and the prince has fallen madly in love with her and departs. Cinderella is heartbroken. She is also in love with the prince. She returns to her, destitute existence with her stepsisters in the English version, and mourns for her beloved. Now, then the prince comes back and basically goes around the village trying to find the woman who this lost slipper fits. Now, this is very complicated, but what I want you to understand is that there's a fundamental primordial puzzle on Earth here that you see every day, which is women wearing shoes that have a pointed heel right? We call them spikes sometimes, and put them on tiptoe, right? Essentially demand that they walk constantly on tiptoe. And then we also have this thing where ballerinas are spinning around on the very tip point of their leg, which has it's been transformed into essentially a spike. And there's all kinds of prosaic explanations for how this developed. I think they're bullshit, mostly. Or rather, I think that they have some relevance and are worth considering, but are missing something primordial, which is mythic rather than abstract. Yeah? And that is that the Earth is literally spinning in space on a crystal slipper, which we call the ice caps. Now, what I'm going to get at here is a perspective that was deeply impressed on me during my non-ordinary experience, which is that the Earth strongly resembles, metaphorically, an ovum, an ever-fertile ovum, in what we could understand as a male womb, right? And that is the gravitational influence of the sun. Now, this story is deeply related to other stories, particularly the Robin Hood story, where you have a situation where there is many situations in many stories, not just Robin Hood. And Robin Hood is very peculiar because in Robin Hood, the sovereign is a criminal, a bad man, who is captured Maid Marian and is going to use her as a trap for Robin Hood. But the feature of these stories that I want to capture here and pay attention to is a situation where a sovereign has a daughter, and rather than just marry her off by arrangement or for power, prestige, wealth, the preservation of the royal dynasty and so forth, what they really want is the finest suitor available. And so what they sometimes do in this situation is they hold some kind of a contest. One of the most common in the stories that I've been exposed to is an archery contest. And so what you can see here is that the royal person, the king, for example, who is the father of this woman, is arranging a situation where a suitor can be chosen by merit and skillfulness rather than by association with power, wealth, domination, etc. And this is extremely important because the Earth, being in this perspective, an ever-fertile egg floating in space-time, is constantly attracting suitors. And the sun and the other planets and so forth, they mitigate these approaches. Things smack into Jupiter, the sun transforms their trajectory. Things smack into the moon. All of the planets participate in gravidically affecting incoming objects. And, the fertilization of the human ovum, or all fertilization processes, acquire their structure, form, features, dynamism, and meaning not from the Earth, but from timespace, which is their origin, right? The universe makes bubbles of its own characteristics and properties. impossible that organisms are an exception to that. So here's what I'm trying to get at. In the Cinderella story, the Earth has lost one of her ice caps, right? And so really, what's going on when the prince returns to look for her is not he's got a slipper in hand and he's trying to find out which young woman's foot it fits. Rather, he knows that she had 2 slippers when he saw her, and now she has only 1. So, in this sense, what he would be looking for is a young woman who either has the other slipper or it's the right fit, right? The size of the slipper is right. So the size of the lost ice cap on which the Earth twirls like a ballerina. I imagine this is her southern ice cap. He finds her, they marry. The Earth becomes a living world, the only one we know of in the solar system. Acquires this incredibly gorgeous blue dress, which, by the way, transmits her fertility just in the same way that human women advertise, in a sense, their fertility and beauty and depth and so forth with their clothing and shoes. So the thing I want to make really clear is that at this point in Earth's developmental history, she's been broadcasting, I am fertile as hell, to all of timespace for, a few billion years. And what that means is that for at least over a span, at the minimum, if we're thinking relativistically, there's a 3 billion year light sphere around the Earth. Anything within 3 billion light years knows that Earth is fertile and alive. Now, this story becomes very complex because prior to being fertilized for the first time, I think you can see the complexities here if you're thinking ahead. There are different kinds of suitors, right? And the Earth has experienced suitor-like events after the inception of life. One of them wiped out most of the complex life on Earth. So prior to that first inception, and human women suffer the same thing. Their first exposure to sex, insemination, and so forth, may or may not be voluntary, may or may not be beneficent, beautiful, loving, may be rape, right? Undesired, or horrific, tormenting, subjugation. And so, planets are somewhat similar in the sense that there are different kinds of suitors. And the suitors that enter the atmosphere at a harsh angle, if they're large, tend to cause devastation, right? The extinction events for the Earth are like her having strokes, and she's quite terrified of them. And you can also imagine that the human fascination, largely a male fascination, with projectiles, spears, arrows, bullets, sling stones, missiles, all of this stuff, satellites, these can be seen as, expressions of this feature that's local, historical, central to the history and future of life on Earth. It's also conceivable that the Earth became so frightened of bad suitors that she instilled in the humans a desire to become projectile experts in the hopes of deflecting these events that cause her to have strokes and can snuff her completely. Now, most of us humans are concerned with global warming. A lot of us aren't. A lot of very stupid people are like, yeah, who cares? Give me, I want better cars and more coal power. Be that as it may, one of the things I was shown very directly is this. When Earth's ice caps shrink, she gets hotter. When she's hotter, she's more fertile. She attracts suitors at a greater rate per interval, and she attracts kinds of suitors that may be wildly undesirable and may be very aggressive. Not all of these suitors are merely chunks of ice or stone. As humans are almost entirely unaware of this, I'm sure other researchers and those who are curious have become aware of something similar to what I am talking about. But, panspermists and so forth, right? I'm arguing for a kind of panspermia that is not merely biological. Suitors can deliver assets that are crucial to the formation and continuation of life, assets like water, amino acids, mineral assets, complex chemistries, and so forth. But they can also deliver, most likely, bacteria and or viruses. We don't know that space is dead. We presume it. I would argue that not only is space not dead, it might actually be a form of transcendent intelligence that is implicit in the nature of space-time. This is the opposite of how humans generally think. It's a more than merely living system. Life and organisms as we understand them are sequelae, right? Children, very specific, physicalized children of the principles that underlie space-time and that which produces space-time, which is so non-ordinary that I rarely desire to speak of it. Mostly it'll just get me in trouble. And frankly, I have enough trouble at the moment. So I've painted the basic perspective. The thing I really want to highlight is that the reduction in the extent of the ice caps is crucially determinative of the future and by proxy the meaning of the history of life on Earth, right? If you snuff the planet or you destroy all complex life, or you make it so miserable for there to be organisms here that it just becomes a kind of living hell, then you've taken a shit in the hand of the entire history of life on Earth and the dreams and aspirations of every organism that has ever existed here. Right? The fundamental priority is preserve the viability of the biosphere. There is, without that, all priorities end. And recently, actually this morning, I've followed a variety of the branches of the topics that have now been collected under the rubric, the phenomenon, which is an absurd rubric, because it's not the phenomenon, it is a phenomenon. And actually, it's a complex array of different phenomenon. But be that as it may. I was listening, no, I wasn't listening, I was, while having a bagel and some coffee this morning, I was scrolling through Reddit. And I saw that, I haven't looked at the article yet, but I saw that Avi Loeb had perhaps either declared or suggested that an incoming interstellar object could be, or he may have actually said is, an invasion force, an invasive object from a non-human intelligence that could reach Earth as soon as November 2025. Now, I don't know what to make of Avi's writing on this matter yet, haven't looked at it. And like any rational person, my first inclination is dismissive. By what measure would you declare these particular characteristics to be associated with this object? The problem is that this kind of insight is incredibly timely, right? This is what I was saying in the beginning of my discussion. With the shrinking of the Earth's ice caps, see, here's the problem. It may be that there are beings and or intelligences that protect living worlds as long as the primary organisms on those worlds don't become omnicidal like our species is. Right? And that once you have an omnicidal organism, there's a justification for capturing the planet, right? The omnicidal organism can be shown definitively to be on the brink of obliterating the biosphere. And in such a case, right, a very complex array of what we could think of as negotiations, competitions, and so forth might occur. And particularly predatory, because predators focus on disoriented prey, intelligences could become ambiently provocative, local to such planets. Yeah. And the ordinary arguments against interference must fail. We've also, all of these stories, right, about apocalypses and that humans have experienced previously, and they have experienced apocalypses, were preceded, strangely enough, by lights in the sky. By, instances of the phenomenon, quote unquote. So I think we're in a very dangerous, whether or not any of these speculations or perspectives have any value at all, we're in an extremely dangerous transitional situation where the primacy, the historical primacy of our species on this world is almost certainly about to come to an end. Whether that is by attracting suitors that cause, apocalyptic scale damage to the biosphere, or by attracting predators that intend to capture the planet. These are very serious, real concerns. You will see the repercussions of what I'm talking about in your lifetime if you live 20 more years. I was shown future scenarios, not just one, many. This was among them. Unfortunately, it doesn't help to alert the humans to danger. The humans as a species don't respond to dangers intelligently. They're primarily captured by processes of commodification, representational cognition, thrisps, and so forth. And so when you show them a danger, like if you say, for example, there's only 20,000 tuna left in the ocean. Then what happens is, instead of preserving the tuna, they just poach the fuck out of them, put them in freezers, and sell them for millions of dollars. Right? And this is just one example of the kind of behavior that we must expect from the disoriented species to which we currently belong. The answer to this, people are like, well, you talk about these dangers all the time. What should we do? I won't go at length into this, but the answer is the establishment of intelligent human cohorts. And these can be cell-like groups of 5 to 13 individuals, odd numbers are better, that are much like a Green Beret unit or a sports team or a rock band. They learn to become superstars at being human, intelligent, and solving problems that are generated by the disoriented masses of largely captured humans, right? So Mission Impossible teams that start out learning with very simple test missions and develop their intelligences and employ specialists and trade off missions and trade off members so that everybody gets educated and ups their skill level and gets to play heroic games that actually transform the history and future of our world. That's the simple nutshell version of what do we do. Everyone's starving for a meaningful role. Give them something to do. Stop telling them what's wrong. And this is something I was chasing until very recently with the Extinction group, a collapse group. But I was evicted for complaining primarily about long political tirades that were commonly arising from a specific member who suggested that I just leave the group. Though that wasn't the person that evicted me. The person running the group evicted me. And I don't take that personally. I'm not angry or upset. I just feel like they can go on blathering about whatever they want to blather about while the world burns instead of doing something together that's meaningful and beautiful and seemingly impossible. It's not impossible for us to be intelligent together with and for each other and the history and future of life on this world. And talking in each other's ears about the coming disaster is not yet intelligent. Though that can be, that behavior isn't the kind of thing we would want to just get rid of. Rather, that's the fertilization phase of what has to turn into action together. So I'm very concerned. Unfortunately, Avi's seemingly unbalanced suggestion or declaration is too timely for me to ignore it. It fits perfectly in the timelines I was shown, and I find it quite concerning, especially when we correlate it with the seemingly very dramatic uptick of non-ordinary sky phenomena over the past, say, 10 years. So I'm going to take some time and have a break and meditate, and I will return for the second part of this walk and talk. You know, it's conceivable and not unlikely at all that since the formation of the Soul Foundation, participants in that foundation have been privy to information from various sources that never had a companion cohort to communicate meaningfully to. Right? Various branches of the intelligence agencies in the United States, various branches of the military in the United States, and probably other countries as well, people skilled in remote viewing, there's a broad array of organs of human intelligence collection that never had anyone to talk to, right? Or they can only kind of talk to themselves. And even people within those organizations who may have felt that it was urgent, that something they had seen, discovered, gathered data on, etc., be communicated to people outside their organization. Who would they possibly go to, right? There's nobody there. I mean, you could go to MUFON or something, but even that's probably too loosely organized to be helpful, right? So with the advent of the Soul Foundation, this is truly an epoch-making time for us moderns, because a variety of extremely wealthy people and extremely well-educated people have become very focused on considerations that orbit whether or not the humans are alone in the universe, which has been the prevailing fiction for a long, long time, and is just as absurd as thinking that your hand is an object. This guy here is interested in obtaining some protein from me. Oh, this guy isn't a guy. This guy's a girl. Yeah, just a second. What do you think? You want to try it? Nope. The actual situation is kind of unsurprising, because the humans have been wondering if there are they sort of have the wrong idea, right? In so many ways. They have the idea that spacemen or women or beings from another planet would very probably be motivated quite similarly to us. And it's just not true. Scarcity is artificial. There's no such thing as scarcity around here. The local scarcity can be real, right? You can have a place where, for example, it's very difficult to get water. No problem getting water to that place if humans organize intelligently with and for each other. So, the scarcity that drives wars and the military prison industrial complex on Earth and capitalism and, all of the isms that humans live and die in the dire shadow of, that stuff's almost all of it, not all of it, but nearly all of it is artificially imposed, right? The Earth can easily support 8 billion humans. It's doing it right now. What it can't support is trillions of objects and cars and war and the pollution of the oceans. This is what is unsupportable, not large populations of humans. Though large populations of humans do present dangers to the homeostatic resilience and biodiverse resilience of our world. So this is a new age for us. There are a broad, burgeoning population of cohorts of humans that are acquiring the capacity to act meaningfully on intelligence from astronomers, sky watchers, the military, the intelligence community, and so forth. And this is a new thing. Mostly what we've had in that domain up until now are either imposters, relatively poorly organized cohorts, or honey traps, right? Where basically you're trying to catch people who are disclosing things that are meant to be a secret. I think it was clear to me, it was impossible or very difficult, very challenging for me to understand anything about what it means to be human or alive or an organism until I had assistance from a non-human intelligence that could simply take my perspective to a position that it's extremely unlikely for common humans to ever see from or see from within. And that experience changed everything for me. It became blatantly obvious that time-space is a transcendent medium, that there are unimaginably sophisticated intelligences associated with our world, our sun, time-space itself. There are definitely beings that oversee and curate living worlds in a way not entirely dissimilar to how bees oversee, curate, and symbiose with vast living environments, plant life primarily. However, the bees feed all kinds of things, right? Honey is profoundly nourishing, energetic, magical, healing. They make way more honey than they can ever use. This is not accidental. No bee can hoard honey. Birds and other animals, other organisms feed on bee bodies, both living and dead. You can see everywhere in nature the exchange of intelligence as organism. The incredible depth of symbiotic communion, which is the very source and preservatory character of life on our world. It is not individual lives that matter, although those also matter. It is the shared context that arises, is in-charactered, and diversifies on a world like ours, which is unimaginably paradisical compared to, for organisms, compared to most of what we know about local space and time, right? Hard radiation, vacuum, etc. There are probably types of organisms for whom those threats are not particularly terrifying, but they are not like the organisms we have on Earth, in my view. I don't really want to circle back to what I had intended to talk about. Bureaucracies are exemplars of how humans are captured by features of representational cognition and what I call thrisps, of which language is a primary substrate. Also, like left hemispheric grasping, objectification, abstraction, hypotheticals. I think I'll leave those topics for a near-term future conversation. I'm looking forward to reading Avi's paper. Avi is an incredibly important mind who is, happy to operate both within and outside the commercial, academic, and scientific communities. And I think as a spokesperson, it's so funny to say that word, for freedom of research, speculation, and intelligence, he is Avatar-like. And he's unwilling to play the games that nearly everyone else is playing in order to preserve, their tenure and salaries and grant money, research money, and so forth. He doesn't care about that, or The degree to which he cares is dwarfed by the degree to which his curiosity drives him toward insight and discovery. I'm very profoundly grateful and humbled to have this time together, to learn and explore and grow and discover, to unforget the incredible depth of wonder and beauty that is our origin in nature as beings, organisms, animals, human beings, terrestrial organisms. Each of these registers is bright with promise and awe-inspiring beauty. I never forget that. I carry it in my heart. I remember it every day, every moment that I am alive. So grateful for those of you who find my walk and talks helpful, interesting, diverting, calming, whatever benefits you may get. I would love to hear your questions or comments, or scathing critiques are also welcome. Please feel free to tickle the algorithm in whatever way feels right for you, or support my work with a one-time donation, sharing my content, sharing it with others of similar interest, or joining my incredibly tiny Patreon supporters. Thank you for joining me. I wish you the fulfillment of the promise of your human incarnation, and I hope that insight, the spirit of insight and creativity, art, literature, music, intelligence will dwell with you in your heart, in your life, in your experiences. And I look forward to learning together again very soon. Thank you for joining me. Bye-bye for now.